A Tender Season by Everett Cole. The English countryside blossomed under the May sunshine of 1814. Fields of wildflowers stretched across the rolling hills surrounding Thornfield Manor, their perfume carried on gentle breezes through open windows. Inside the grand estate, Lady Catherine Montgomery paced across the library floor, her silk gown rustling with each determined step. "I cannot believe Father would do this to me," she said, her voice trembling with indignation. "To arrange a marriage without my consent, it is positively medieval." Her lady's maid, Mary, stood quietly by the door, having witnessed this particular tantrum building since the arrival of Lord Montgomery's letter that morning. The news had come suddenly. Catherine was to be married to the Duke of Westmoreland's son, a man she had never met. "Perhaps the gentleman is kind, my lady," Mary offered gently. "Your father would not match you with someone unworthy." Catherine stopped her pacing and turned to face the window. Beyond the glass lay the estate she had grown to love, the place where she had spent 22 years in relative freedom, riding across the countryside and managing household affairs since her mother's death 5 years prior. That independence would soon end. "Father has not seen me in 3 years. How could he possibly know what would make me happy?" She pressed her palm against the cool window pane. "He has been in London playing politics while I've kept his estate functioning. And now, as reward, I am to be handed to a stranger." Catherine had never considered herself a great beauty, though her features were pleasing enough. Her dark hair and intelligent eyes gave her a distinguished appearance rather than the fashionable delicate blonde look so many gentlemen seemed to prefer. What she possessed instead was a quick mind and determined spirit, qualities that had earned her respect among the tenants and servants, but had rendered her somewhat intimidating to potential suitors. "The Duke's son arrives tomorrow," she said with resignation. "I suppose I should prepare myself to be civil, at least." Mary nodded, relieved that her mistress's practical nature was beginning to overcome her initial anger. "Shall I lay out your blue dress, my lady? It complements your complexion beautifully." Catherine waved a dismissive hand. "No, I shall not pretend to be something I am not. The burgundy riding habit will do nicely. If he is to marry me, he might as well know from the start that I am not some simpering young girl." The following morning dawned clear and bright. Catherine had risen early, determined to spend her final hours of freedom riding across the estate. The wind in her hair and the powerful motion of her horse beneath her always brought clarity to her thoughts. As she returned to the stables, her cheeks flushed from exertion, she noticed an unfamiliar carriage in the drive. Her stomach tightened with dread. The Duke's son had arrived earlier than expected. She dismounted quickly, handing the reins to a stable boy before hurrying toward the house. Her riding habit was dusty from the morning's adventure, her hair loosened from its pins. This was hardly the impression a lady should make upon first meeting her intended, but Catherine found herself caring less about propriety than she perhaps should. As she entered through the garden door, intending to slip upstairs unnoticed, she collided with a tall figure rounding the corner. "Pardon me," came a deep voice as strong hands steadied her by the shoulders. Catherine looked up into the face of a man perhaps 5 years her senior. His dark hair was windblown, as if he too had been enjoying the morning air. His eyes, a striking shade of green, regarded her with surprise and undisguised interest. "You must be Lady Catherine," he said, releasing her arms and stepping back respectfully. She straightened her posture, chin lifting slightly. "I am. And you, sir, must be Lord James Harrington." A smile touched his lips. "Indeed. Though I had planned to make a better first impression than accosting you in the hallway." "I would hardly call it accosting when I was the one rushing blindly around corners," she replied, studying him. He was not what she had expected. There was no aristocratic sneer, no obvious disdain for country life in his manner. If anything, he appeared as comfortable in this setting as she was. "You've been riding?" he observed, glancing at her attire. "Yes. I prefer to start my days in the saddle." She watched his face carefully, waiting for the disapproval that typically followed when gentlemen learned of her unfeminine pursuits. Instead, his smile widened. "As do I. Perhaps tomorrow you might show me the best trails? I brought my favorite mount from London, and he's eager for more than the confines of your stables." Catherine found herself momentarily speechless. "You wish to ride with me?" "Unless you prefer solitude. I would not wish to impose." There was something disarming about his directness, the way his eyes met hers without pretense or calculation. No imposition, she heard herself saying. I would be pleased to show you the grounds. A clock chimed somewhere in the house, breaking the moment. Catherine became acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. If you'll excuse me, Lord Harrington, I should change before we dine. He bowed slightly. Of course. Until then, Lady Catherine. As she hurried upstairs, Catherine found her heart beating faster than her morning ride could account for. Lord James was not at all what she had feared. Whether that made this arranged marriage more bearable or more dangerous to her independence, she wasn't yet certain. Over the following fortnight, Catherine found herself increasingly drawn to Lord James. Their morning rides had become a ritual, venturing farther across the estate each day. He proved to be an excellent horseman and a surprisingly attentive listener as she spoke of the land and the people who worked it. You have a remarkable understanding of estate management, he commented one morning as they paused atop a hill overlooking the tenant farms. Most ladies would consider such matters beneath their notice. Catherine watched a group of workers harvesting in the distance. My mother taught me that privilege comes with responsibility. When she died, Father retreated to London, leaving me to ensure our people were cared for. She glanced at him. Does that surprise you? It impresses me, he replied simply. My own father sees his estates merely as sources of income to fund his political ambitions. Something in his tone made Catherine study him more closely. You disagree with that approach? James ran a hand through his wind-blown hair. I believe land ownership carries obligations to the people, to the future. My father and I have had many disagreements on this point. This revelation surprised her. Yet you've agreed to this marriage arrangement. Surely that shows some filial obedience. A wry smile crossed his face. I agreed to meet you, Lady Catherine. The marriage itself, I believe such matters require more than parental approval. Her heart quickened at his implication. Are you suggesting you might refuse the match? I'm suggesting that neither of us should be forced into a lifetime commitment without mutual regard. His green eyes held hers. My father may control my inheritance, but he cannot control my heart. Catherine looked away, suddenly flustered by the intensity of his gaze. Most men of your station would not hesitate to marry for advantage. I am not most men. James dismounted and approached a nearby stone wall, leaning against it thoughtfully. My mother married for advantage. Her unhappiness has been my most consistent childhood memory. Catherine slipped from her saddle to join him, leaving her horse to graze nearby. I'm sorry. That must have been difficult. It taught me what I do not want in my own life. He turned to face her. When I marry, it will be to a woman I respect and admire, someone with whom I can build something meaningful. The breeze stirred Catherine's hair as she considered his words. My father would be furious if you rejected the match. As would mine, James acknowledged. But I did not come here with the intention of disappointing anyone. I came hoping to find a compatible partner. Their eyes met, and Catherine felt a curious warmth spread through her chest. Over these past weeks, she had seen James's kindness when speaking with tenant farmers, his intelligence when discussing books from her library, his humor when telling stories of his travels. He was nothing like the arrogant aristocrat she had feared. And have you, she asked softly, found what you were hoping for? James reached for her hand, his touch gentle but assured. I find myself more intrigued each day, Lady Catherine. You are unlike any woman I've encountered in London society. I should hope so, she replied with a small smile. I find London society perfectly tedious. His laugh echoed across the hillside. Another point on which we agree. He hesitated before adding, would it be presumptuous to call you Catherine when we're alone like this? The formality between them had become increasingly stifling as their companionship deepened. Not presumptuous at all, James. His name felt intimate on her lips, a small but significant shift in their relationship. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the countryside spread before them like a painting. We should return, Catherine said eventually. Cook will be expecting us for luncheon. As they rode back to the manor, Catherine found herself contemplating a future that, just weeks ago, had seemed like a prison sentence. Now, with James riding beside her, that same future held possibilities she had never dared to imagine. June brought warmer days and unexpected complications. A letter arrived from London bearing the Duke of Westmoreland's seal, summoning James back to the city immediately. Family business, the letter claimed, though James suspected his prolonged absence had raised his father's suspicions. I must go, he told Catherine as they walked through the rose garden that evening. But I shall return as soon as possible. Catherine's face remained composed, though her eyes betrayed her concern. Of course. Your family has claims on your time. This isn't how I planned to leave things between us. James stopped walking, turning to face her. Over the past month, their relationship had blossomed into something neither had anticipated. No formal declarations had been made, but the connection between them was undeniable. "How long will you be gone?" she asked. "A fortnight at most. I've written to your father as well, expressing my wish to formalize our engagement upon my return." His eyes searched hers. "If that meets with your approval." Catherine felt her breath catch. Despite the marriage arrangement that had brought them together, James had never presumed her consent. He had courted her properly, winning her trust, and though she scarcely dared admit it, her heart. "It does," she replied softly. Relief washed over his features. He reached for her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Then I shall count the hours until I return." The following morning, Catherine watched from the library window as James's carriage disappeared down the long drive. An unsettling emptiness filled the house in his absence. She had grown accustomed to his presence, their conversations over breakfast, afternoon chess matches, evening walks through the gardens. Days passed slowly. Catherine threw herself into estate matters, visiting tenants and reviewing accounts, anything to keep her mind occupied. Yet each night her thoughts returned to James and the future they had begun to envision together. On the 10th day after his departure, an unexpected carriage arrived at Thornfield Manor. Catherine hurried to the entrance hall, heart leaping with hope that James had returned early. Instead, she was greeted by the stern countenance of an older gentleman dressed in expensive but conservative attire. "Lady Catherine Montgomery?" he inquired, his voice clipped and formal. She straightened her posture instinctively. "Yes, and you are?" "The Duke of Westmoreland." He handed his hat and gloves to the waiting footman. "I believe we have matters to discuss regarding my son." Catherine's stomach tightened with apprehension. "Of course, Your Grace. Please come this way." She led him to the drawing room, mind racing. James had spoken of his father's controlling nature, his rigid adherence to social standing and propriety. Once they were seated, the Duke wasted no time with pleasantries. "I'll be direct, Lady Catherine. This dalliance between you and my son must end." Her fingers gripped the armrests of her chair. "Dalliance, Your Grace? I was under the impression our families had arranged a match." "An arrangement I've reconsidered." His cold gaze assessed her. "My son is heir to one of England's oldest dukedoms. His marriage must strengthen our political alliances, not tie him to a country estate with modest connections." Catherine felt as though she'd been slapped. "I see. And does Lord James share your revised opinion?" A flash of irritation crossed the Duke's face. "My son is young and prone to romantic notions. He believes himself in love with you." The words should have brought her joy, but the Duke's tone transformed them into something almost shameful. "And this displeases you because?" "Because I have secured a more advantageous match. The Earl of Pembroke's daughter brings connections to Parliament that would greatly benefit our family's interests." He leaned forward slightly. "My son will inherit responsibilities beyond this peaceful corner of England. He requires a wife prepared for political life in London." Catherine maintained her composure with effort. "Have you discussed this with James?" "He refuses to see reason." The Duke's mouth tightened with displeasure. "Which is why I've come to appeal to your sense of propriety. If you truly care for my son, you will release him from any understanding between you." "You're asking me to reject him," Catherine stated flatly. "I'm offering you a dignified exit from a situation that can bring you nothing but disappointment. James may think himself in love, but when faced with his duties and position, such feelings will fade." His voice softened slightly, adopting an almost paternal tone. "You would be miserable in London society, my dear. The politics, the scrutiny, it would crush your country sensibilities." Catherine stood abruptly, anger overcoming her shock. "You know nothing of my sensibilities, Your Grace. Nor, I suspect, do you truly know your son if you believe he values political advantage over genuine connection." The Duke rose as well, his expression hardening. "I've watched you these past weeks, Lady Catherine. You've captured my son's fancy by presenting yourself as different from the women he knows, riding astride like a man, speaking on matters beyond a lady's province. It's a novel distraction, but hardly the foundation for a lasting union." "You've had me watched?" Catherine felt violated by the revelation. "I protect my family's interests." He retrieved an envelope from his coat. "Inside you'll find a settlement. Generous compensation for any disappointment." End this now before James returns, and you'll want for nothing." Catherine stared at the envelope, then back at the Duke's impassive face. "I think you should leave, Your Grace." "Consider carefully before you refuse," he warned. "My son's inheritance, his position in society, everything depends on my approval. Would you have him sacrifice all for a country romance?" The question struck at Catherine's deepest fears. Would James resent her if choosing her cost him his birthright? Could their love survive such a sacrifice? "James will return tomorrow," the Duke continued. "When he does, he'll find your answer waiting. I trust you'll make the sensible choice." He placed the envelope on a side table before departing with a formal bow. Catherine remained motionless in the center of the room long after the Duke's carriage had departed. The happiness she had begun to embrace now seemed as fragile as spun glass. Night had fallen by the time Catherine made her decision. After hours of pacing, tears, and finally clarity, she sat at her writing desk and penned 2 letters. The first, addressed to James, contained truth she could no longer withhold. The second was for her father in London. She sealed both with wax, then called for Mary to arrange for their delivery. Sleep eluded her that night as she wandered the halls of Thornfield Manor, memorizing its contours and comforts. By morning, she had made peace with the path ahead. The Duke's carriage returned first, arriving precisely at 10 o'clock. Catherine received him in the drawing room, her posture straight, her expression serene. "Have you reached a decision, Lady Catherine?" he asked, confident in his victory. She gestured to a chair. "I have, Your Grace, though perhaps not the one you expected." Before she could elaborate, the door opened again. Catherine's breath caught as James entered, his travel-worn appearance suggesting he had ridden through the night to reach her. "Father?" Confusion crossed his features as he looked between them. "What are you doing here?" The Duke rose, displeasure evident in the tightening of his jaw. "Ensuring the family's interests are protected. I explained everything to Lady Catherine yesterday." James moved to Catherine's side, his eyes searching hers. "What did he tell you?" "That you stand to lose your inheritance if you marry me," she replied calmly. "That he's arranged a more suitable match with political advantages." James's expression darkened. "And did he also mention that I've refused this suitable match repeatedly? Or that I informed him I would marry you with or without his blessing?" The Duke interrupted sharply. "You are being foolish, James. Lady Catherine understands the realities better than you. Tell him, my dear." Catherine maintained her composure as she faced the older man. "What I understand, Your Grace, is that you underestimate both your son and me." She withdrew a folded document from her pocket. "This arrived by special messenger this morning, my father's response to the letter I sent last night." James looked puzzled as she handed the paper to the Duke. The older man's face transformed as he read, color draining from his cheeks. "What is it?" James asked. "Lord Montgomery has been appointed Foreign Secretary in the new government," the Duke said faintly. "Effective immediately." Catherine nodded. "My father has spent these past years building political alliances while managing his estates through me. It seems his efforts have borne fruit at last." The implications were clear. The Montgomery family now held significant political power, precisely the connection the Duke had sought elsewhere. "There's more," Catherine continued. "My father expresses his enthusiastic support for our match and extends an invitation for the Duke to join him in London to discuss how our families might work together for mutual benefit." James's expression shifted from confusion to barely contained laughter. "It seems, Father, that you've achieved your political alliance after all." The Duke refolded the letter, his tactical mind already adjusting to this new information. "Indeed, perhaps I was hasty in my assessment, Lady Catherine." "Perhaps," she agreed, declining to pursue his humiliation further. "Though I should clarify one point, Your Grace. When I marry your son, it will not be for political advantage or family alliances." She met James's gaze. "It will be because I love him, and I believe we can build a meaningful life together." James took her hand, his grip tight with emotion. "And I love you, Catherine. Title, inheritance, politics, none of it matters without you." The Duke cleared his throat. "Well, it seems matters have resolved themselves rather neatly." He looked between them with newfound respect. "I shall await Lord Montgomery's correspondence in London." With a formal bow, he excused himself, leaving them alone. When the door closed, James pulled Catherine into his arms. "I rode through the night fearing what my father might have told you. When I received your letter, "I needed you to know the truth," she said, resting her palms against his chest. "That I would marry you with or without titles and inheritances. That what we found together matters more than social position." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I would have renounced everything." "I know." She smiled up at him. "That's precisely why I couldn't let you do it." Outside, spring had given way to early summer. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow across the room where two people had found, against all expectations, a love based on mutual respect and understanding rather than convenience or obligation. "What happens now?" Catherine asked softly. James took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Now, my love, we begin." In the months that followed, Thornfield Manor witnessed a wedding that united not just two people but two visions for the future. The Duke of Westmoreland, ever practical, eventually embraced the match that brought his family unprecedented political influence. Lord Montgomery found in James a worthy steward for his country estates while he served in London. As for Catherine and James, they created a life that honored both their responsibilities and their hearts. Dividing their time between London and the countryside, they proved that love and duty need not be opposing forces, but rather complementary strengths in a world that often tried to separate them. In the tender season of their beginning, they had laid the foundation for a marriage that would weather whatever storms awaited, not because it had been arranged, but because they had chosen it freely, with clear eyes and full hearts.